it's a complex ecosystem. So sometimes an incident in one school gets covered by media in City of Toronto, and it overshadows the good work that happens in every classroom. These other things become distraction, and a lot of resources, money, and our staff time goes into resolving those instead of supporting the kids in the classroom itself.
Welcome to the Education Matters podcast. Today's guest is Peter Singh. Peter brings over 30 years of experience in the K-12 education sector to his role as Executive Officer of IT Services at the Toronto District School Board. A passionate advocate for the transformative power of technology, Peter has spent the last 14 years leading the TDSB's IT Services department, spearheading initiatives that have reshaped how technology supports teaching, learning, and operations across Canada's largest school board. So I've known Peter well for the last 6 or 7 years, but sometimes education is also a small world. Peter's children attended my mother's school in Peel, where she was one of the first educators to create computer labs in the early 90s. A fun coincidence that underscores how education connects us all in really unexpected ways. And I'm thrilled to share my conversation with Peter to bring you his story and his experiences. In education circles in Canada in particular, Peter really needs no introduction. But I think whether you're a startup in EdTech or a school administrator, there is a lot to learn from our conversation. Peter's journey to becoming a leader in education technology is as compelling as his work. Born and raised in Punjab, India, he grew up playing imaginative games with his friends, a childhood that seemed to have laid the foundations for his curiosity and love of numbers and problem solving. After immigrating to Canada in the 1990s, Peter began his career with the Etobicoke Board of Education and witnessed firsthand the complex amalgamation of 6 Toronto districts into the TDSB. And you'll hear how this experience profoundly shaped his understanding of large-scale education systems. In this episode, Peter shares his reflections on that monumental merger and the infrastructure challenges it posed, along with his perspective on the parallels between big city challenges and the unique demands of mega districts like TDSB. We also delve into the history of personal computer adoptions in schools in the early 90s, which is a fascinating backdrop to his work several years later in bridging the digital divide and ensuring equitable access to technology for all students in Toronto. In our conversation, Peter also reflects on TDSB's focus on foundational priorities such as early literacy, STEM education, and investment in early childhood education. He also emphasizes the importance of cybersecurity in protecting students and staff in an increasingly digital world, and the enduring strengths of Canada's public education system in preparing students for the future. And now for my conversation with Peter Singh. Peter Singh, welcome to the podcast. Where does this podcast find you today?
I am actually home today, so I decided to stay back on a Friday morning. It's been a busy week, so I thought, let's do a podcast from home today.
Nice. Well, I love your setup. Where is home for you?
I am in the city of Mississauga. So if you ever been shopping this way in an area called Heartland, so it's a Heartland shopping center. So I live close to that shopping area. So I tell my friends that we never miss a sale because we live right where the shopping area is in Mississauga. So
that's funny. Well, Peter, I feel you're a man that needs no introduction because I think everybody in the EdTech world and CTO world here in Canada, never mind Ontario, knows the work you've been up to for quite a while. But can you give the audience a brief overview of your role in your work?
Oh, definitely. And if you're not familiar with Toronto District School Board, we are the largest school board in the country. and we have close to 240,000 daily learners coming into our 583 schools. So I had the privilege to serve as an executive officer of IT and information management services at the board. So it's been fantastic to be in an organization this size and be close to the education sector.
Well, we're going to jump in to a lot of questions about, you know, having the seat that you have and working with not only so many students, but so many staff, and then also so many, in your case, IT professionals, right? I'm very interested to ask some questions about what it is like to work on that scale. But before we get there, can you tell me a bit about where and when you grew up?
Oh, definitely. And I was born in India, and north and western part of India, state of Punjab. And my early schooling was there. And I did my bachelor's there before I arrived at these shores in 1987 and continued my studies here. And then finally jumped into, I will say, ed sector in 1992 with the Etobicoke Board of Education.
Hmm. What was schooling like in Punjab?
Um, in predominantly in India, the public schooling is not up to par. So I had the privilege to be sent to a private school.
Hmm.
And most of the private schools in India, their curriculum is actually aligned to, I will say, British curriculum over the
Hmm.
years. And that's the influence the British had on our education system over the years. And that still continues. So the curriculum was very much aligned to what's being taught in Western schools.
Hmm. And so was it very much like teacher at the front of the class, you guys in rows?
Oh, definitely. And again, we had our, I guess I'll call it permanent desk in the classroom. So we literally stayed in the same classroom as the teachers had rotated. So
Hmm.
that was another piece that you were connected to that particular classroom and you were there all day long, unless you had an option to go to the library or now you're going to go hit the playgrounds. Otherwise, you were literally in the same chair for the entire day.
Hmm. Did you enjoy school as a young student?
I think so. I think I loved the school, and it was more also that I'm going to be with my friends,
Hmm.
and besides the learning, we also going to go out play sports, and I was always into sports, so that was an attraction. Saying you got to be there, but on the flip side, I don't remember we having an option saying I don't want to go to school. You
Hmm.
got up every morning, you jumped on your bike, and you rode the bike to the school. And that was it. That was part of normal kid stuff you did. And
Hmm.
schooling was the center of it. And the family at home was very focused to make sure we go to a good school and we stay focused on academics.
You know, I'm finding in all the interviews I've been doing, Peter, that one of the emerging themes or now emergent theme is this idea of play and friendship and bonding at school as what everybody remembers. Can you describe that for me? Like maybe we start with like what sports did you play at recess?
Also, I think at recess mostly it was cricket. And
Mm,
we couldn't play full cricket in 20 minutes or half an hour breaks, so we used a sharpener as a ball, and the clipboard has a bat, and we will continue playing if somebody's turn is to bat unless they got out. We'll continue to play that. So we created our
mm,
own bat and balls, fake ones, to just continue to play as fun. But to me now, I just shake my head and say, what the hell we were talking about? How can a sharpener, pencil sharpener, be a ball? But that's what we had, and we just used it. Right? So just now you can say it was creative, but whatever you had around, you made a use of that equipment.
well, I think now these days, bottle flipping, like kids just need half a bottle of water to play a game with each other, and I think it's probably always been that way. The creativity of children to find ways to play. Um, Maybe outside of school, how did you play with your friends? Whether obviously cricket and sports was a big part, but do you have any other recollections of how you played?
I think it was typical because we didn't have access to gaming online, and computers didn't even exist in imagination at that time. And so we were left school, and then you got out and played with your friends, whatever the local games were. And I was good at marbles too. So you
Hmm.
picked up a handful of marbles, you went out and you competed against other kids in the neighborhood. So, and some of the games, those are like board games. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't have access to it, but we just created our own board, more just designed it the way it's supposed to be played, and we didn't have a dice to throw, so we used seeds out of the tamarind, broke them in half. There's a white side when it's broken up, and there's a dark brown side on the other side. You just flip them for the dice. It just mind blowing now to see that whatever was around you, you leveraged that and you created a game out of it. You gamified it. And to me, that was the creativity side, fun, and leveraging the content around it. Now, sometimes I see kids at my own home, how we have so many board games, and 80% to 90% of them sit on the shelf after first 4 or 5 months, right?
Hmm.
Then we talk about the traditional games. Say we didn't have that when we just created our own games. He said, "How did you do that?" When I said, "Whatever we thought was fun to do, we did it as kids." And now I realize that that's where that innovation and creativity sunk in, saying, what will you do if you're just restricted to a few things in life?
Hmm.
And how can you still be creative, playful, and be with your friends, kind of thing. So I think that's one thing that stands out for me from the childhood days.
Is there anything about those days that you wish children today could experience?
I think more of an outdoor piece, connecting with the nature, connecting with your friends outdoors, instead of just connecting over screens. But remember, we are also now dealing with different generations. It's a new way of learning, new way of entertaining, and also new way of connecting. And I see with my own kids also, all their friends are not just local now. Some of the friends they are across the globe because they play
Hmm.
online and they have a fixed time around the clock saying this is when we're going to all get online and we're going to play together for half an hour. And so to me, the playground has gone beyond your backyard, your neighborhood, to entire world is literally a playground now for some of these kids.
Hmm. If I can get you to reflect on your education again, what was the first thing you really remembered loving to learn at school?
I was always curious about new things, and and I'll give an example, and it's in the news these days too. We had one person, my English teacher, she actually moved from British Columbia to India for a number of
Hmm.
years, and as she taught us English, she will also narrate some of those stories around UFOs and others. So kids learning about UFOs, even now when we hear the word UFOs, we our ears perk up. So to me, she will just share some of those interesting scientific stories, or in some cases, it was just fiction. And to
Hmm.
me, I was always curious about a topic, then I'll go a little bit deeper. Then I love the numbers. I've always been a numbers person.
Hmm.
Somehow, for my mind, the numbers work. And if I have something I like and it connects with me, that number will stay for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And in the classroom, there used to be a fun stuff at the end of the day. And we used to have a kind of a quiz master kind of book handed to us. Every quiz has 20 questions. And end of the day, different lanes in the classroom will compete against each other over that quiz. So the teacher will throw questions up and see which teams can answer it. So my goal was always saying, can I win? Can I win? And I used to just remember those facts and things like that one, so I can actually respond quickly and faster than my competing person or team itself too. So the facts, the quizzes, and that was always my go-to piece. I still sometimes tell people a few things and they look at me, Peter, that's not really important. But I said, I thought you will love this fact because I have remembered this fact from somewhere. So sometimes I call myself also source of some useless information because it's just a fact. It's just a number and people don't sometimes care about it. But in my mind, it just stays with me. And that's what was part of my growing up and learning, just getting to those facts, remembering those numbers, and just being, I guess, curious about things and then going deeper into and learning about it.
Well, I love that your teacher somehow invented Kahoot way before Kahoot.
Exactly, right? Now you can see those connections in EdTech, how some of these programs have now started to leverage the same thing. But that was the beginning of it. And whenever still I see, sometimes you read an article, there's some facts or summary of it, and they throw numbers at it. That's the first thing that stays with me for a number of years, saying, wow, that's an important fact. We should know about it.
So this kind of love of numbers and this attraction to working with numbers, is that what eventually gets you into IT? How do you find your way into
definitely.
IT?
Yeah. I think there was two factors. One was IT was emerging in the late 80s. It was one of those things that you know what? This will be a good area and space to go in because opportunities will be there. So I think that was the key piece. And having a strong, I will call now, connection to STEM. I was good in math. I loved physics, applied physics, chem, bio. So the sciences were always something I thought was important and very logical and very, I can say, very factual. So always learning facts itself. So the STEM piece over the years and having that connection to technology, and then once you start to work with technology and over the years, the technology has evolved so much. I believe every single day, every single week, there's something new comes my way, and you always shake your head. Oh my God, this is something new. We needed to learn and see if it fits into the needs we have in our organization.
So you have this passion for numbers, and then you develop this real interest in tech, and you sounds like you see the future being tech enabled to some degree, and want to kind of be involved in that. Did you do another degree when you got to Canada? And maybe in general, what was like the immigration experience like for you?
Definitely. For me, I did computer engineering when I landed here. And so that was the key piece, just having that Canadian academics and just to continue build from my bachelor's in sciences. So that was a huge connection. And the immigration experience was very good for me in a way because the way I ended up being in Canada was I married to a Canadian. So that's how I came to Canada in 87. And my experience was very positive. And I also came with an intent that this is my new digs. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. So I want to actually learn the Canadian ways and learn more about Canada too. And just grow myself to be a good fit here because Canadian culture was a lot different than as I was brought up compared to Indian culture. But I always believed in, doesn't matter where you land, you always want to grab the positives and the good things of the environment you land in. And to me, I made some really good friends as I started to work part-time, as I was studying. And those relationships and friendships have stayed up to today. They're still alive and kicking, and we still hook up with each others. So I think surrounding yourself with people who think like you, who have positive, optimistic mindsets, has helped me to just grow as an individual and be I will say, good Canadian, because when you're born somewhere else, where you're born, how you grew up, that stays part of the DNA. It doesn't matter you were in Italy, you were somewhere in Brazil, doesn't matter. Those things will always stay with you. But when you land over here, especially in the city of Toronto, you can see how the city is truly multicultural city. And honestly, I believe the way city of Toronto is, this is how the world is going to be in 100 plus years. Because now we travel, we move from place to place, we migrate wherever those greener pastures are. As a human beings, I think the world's going to look like Toronto in probably 100 and 150 years. So I'm just blessed to be in a beautiful city like Toronto and call it my home.
Well, I think that's wonderfully said. I often feel that, call it like first generation immigrants such as yourself and my parents, see Canada, see Toronto for what it is, better than like their kids sometimes, who take for granted a lot of what's around them, the opportunity, the multicultural aspect of a city like Toronto. So I appreciate that perspective. So how did you find your way into education? So now you're a math and physics and STEM guy. You've gone to a couple universities. You have an immigration experience, but none of that suggests you should get into education. How did you find your way into education?
Oh, so when I finished my education here in 1992, I was applying wherever I can see somebody's hiring a computer programmer, because I wanted to be a C programmer, C++. That was something I thought I'm going to end up doing. So I was applying everywhere. And luckily, the person at that time, the general manager of Etobicoke Board of Education, interviewed me. And he goes, I see you're looking for a programmer job, but I don't have a programming job right now. But I do need somebody who actually can help us out with the data entry. I'm short in data entry stuff. And I see on your resume, you put down that what your typing speed is. So based on that one, I want to offer you a job in the data entry. Are you interested in it? So here you can see a young person who's looking for a start in technology, and this little window opens up. And I said, yes, I'm in. So that was starting as a data entry clerical piece, was how I got into IT from day one.
So you really started at the bottom, like data entry. I can't think of a more like entry level role.
Definitely. And it's, you know what, sometimes I always believe luck's on your side too. And I started day one there. The next day, somebody resigned in board's field services team. And he comes to me next day. He goes, I lost a person in the field services team. Would you be interested in doing that work? And again, said, yes, I'm in. Count me in.
You got a promotion
so
on
literally
day
within
2.
48 hours, I went from first job to a second job. And the person who was kind of a mentor and a coach assigned to me to show me the ropes was really good. And being a new person, I learned a lot quickly from that individual and from others around me. And I loved the work that I had an opportunity to go to schools, talk to people, and see the kids, see the classrooms, and also travel around the city. I love driving, and for me, driving from school to school was also another experience. You explore new neighborhoods, and some of the things you will never go into an area as a person, but my work took me into those neighborhoods. So I get to see the city from a different perspective. And that was part of the being at Etobicoke Board of Education. So to me, being a field service tech, driving around the city, making connections and talking to people from all these different schools was an amazing experience for the first few years. Yeah.
What did the work entail in the early 90s? So now this is where you and I, at least my general experience, overlaps with yours, right? Because now I'm in middle school in the early 90s or so, and I remember like the librarian making this big deal about like these 4 computers or 2 computers we got in the library. So was that the kind of work you were involved in, getting computer labs set up, getting teachers trained on computers? Is that what it looked like in the 90s?
That is correct. You're dead on that one. That PC world was exploding, so the PCs were coming into the schools, and we also had a very good presence of Apple computers too. So, and again, the goal was to get the kids into computers early enough and make sure we introduced them to especially Macs in the early years at that time too. And by the time they got into in high school, which was predominantly a PC ecosystem. So the board's strategy was sitting down with one of the central coordinators at that time. I was asking, why do we have 2 different platforms? Would the kids be confused? And he said, Peter, sit down. Let me tell you why we do this. So I remember the person's name was Bob McNaughton, central coordinator for technology. And the Bob goes, Peter, our role in education is to make sure we expose kids to all the platforms. So they're good in it. So they might end up in a workplace which might be using Apple technology or PC. So they will be ready for both. So that's our goal. So we don't want to be standardizing on one platform. And when they go into a workplace, they're on a different platform. That will be disadvantage to our learners. So we want to be actually exposing them to both. So that's why we invest in both ecosystems. Again, a big lesson learned for me that no, you can't standardize. You're not a bank. You're not a private company that you're just going to stay in one ecosystem and do savings. We're an education system. So we need to actually invest in all platforms. So to me, that has always stayed with me. And I have always pushed for a device is a device. And we assign an IP number. One device can do 5 things for our students or teachers. Another device might be able to do 25 things. So let the stakeholder decide what is a good fit for them to do their work or their learning. And our goal on IT side should be, how do we support them? And along the same lines, and now we have smartphones in our hand, do you think the Rogers and the Bells of the world really care what kind of smartphone you have in your hand? They provide the core services. And sometimes I also see that being in a technology shop, that's some of the work we need to do, that we need to provide those core services. What's on the tail end of it, leveraging those services, is something we just need to protect and serve. We should not be picky about it.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to tech adoption and your view of EdTech, because I think a lot of listeners will find that very instructive. But you also had kind of a, how should I put it, ringside view of a very interesting point in Toronto education history. you mentioned the Etobicoke School Board, which to me doesn't even resonate because I know it as TDSB, but you sort of had a front row to the amalgamation of 4 or 5 major Toronto districts into the TDSB. Can you describe what that was like?
That was a life-changing experience because I have never been to an organization where you actually have to now inherit another organization as part of that environment. And as under Mike Harris' leadership of Ontario, they decided that we actually needed to put these small school boards into bigger units so we can actually have more better savings because for example, in City of Toronto, now Toronto Board of Education is a merger of 6 school boards and a 7th entity. So 6 school boards were Etobicoke, Toronto, North York, City of York, Scarborough, and East York. And there was one small entity called Metro. It used to run out of 45 York Mills. That address doesn't even exist now because the property got sold. And now we see there's townhouses / condominiums in that corner of York Mills and Yonge Street. But that was another small entity that worked with all these school boards. So that was a merger of those 6 boards plus the 7th entity turned into a single school board. And I know TDSB came into existence officially on January 1st, 1998, but the work to get there started almost 2 years before that. So we will have different committees to work on some of the key roles. For example, there was a central committee to look at the network of next generation. There was another committee to actually look at the operating system we need for the future workloads. So again, these are the technology side of things. Then you had a committee looking at what will be our next SAS school information system for a common one for all 6. What will be our ERP for the future? So going from 6 flavors of everything to one, there was a lot of tussle in the back rooms because you remember sometimes when you're in a room, the loudest voice tried to dominate everyone else. And I remember being in the rooms, everyone thought their solution was the best one. We should follow their solutions. And if you ask them, would you go with the other one? I remember hearing the lines saying, over my dead body, I'm not going there. It's not ever going to work for us. The one we have works for us and it's going to work for everyone. So it was a lot of fighting going on in the back rooms. When eventually the leadership stepped in and also provided guidance, made some tough calls. And I can remember some people saying, you know what? I don't want to be part of this change. So they left. They went to other organizations. They didn't stay in education. If they were close to retirement, they took their early retirement. But that was a whole big shift and change. But you talked with the front being in the front seat and the very first few chairs of that whole moving train. I also had an opportunity where the leadership of that time trusted in me to actually drive some of these projects. So I actually led the project that consolidated all the administrative workflows across every single school and centrally. So that was quite a bit of work. And once that work was done in a year and a half or so, then the leadership said, Peter, what do you prefer for your next project? I said, I enjoyed consolidating all our administrative workflows. Now I want to go to the classroom side. So I actually started to consolidate the classroom ecosystem across 6 school boards into a new TDSB standard. So that's work started in 2002. And it took me 5 years to do that one as part of that project. And May 14, 2007 was the last system that was sunsetted. So you can see this journey started in 1997. and 2007 was the last system that got sunsetted. It was a 10 years of journey to move from 6 big entities to single TDSB entity. So big
That's
shift,
incredible.
big change, and a lot of technology changes.
That's incredible. And I think this is also why I introduced you in the way that I did, because you've been around and people know the kind of things you've done. What did you learn from that experience that you think is worthwhile sharing to folks? Because there's a lot of really interesting things that happen. Like, that's a huge scale change. You already described how resistant some folks were. And there you are, like, to the early midpoint of your career. What are the things that you think you can share with us that, you know, someone who hasn't been in that kind of unique situation could learn from?
I think few things really stood and really helped me. I think one was strong relationships, and I had the ability to pick and choose the team members and build that team that will help me run with it. And what that meant was also the trust. The trust I had in the team was huge. So to me, the network I over the years have built with working with various folks from different backgrounds within TDSB, we looking at the volume of staff members who came over from all these 6 school boards, we were more than 500 plus staff members at that time. So having done these projects, I made really some good friends, and I also learned what their strengths were and how can I actually leverage their strong points as part of this new build itself too, and start to build those relationships, those trust, and bring them on board by convincing them why are we doing this one, trying to sell the new solution. So those things really helped me to really run with these key initiatives. And we still, once in a while, those memories still come back when we get together as our friends. And the core 4 guys I worked with at that time, part of this whole merger, I'm the only one who stayed back. Others had moved on to different roles in different organizations. But we still get together at least twice a year and continue to learn from each other and update each other and still go back to the memories. And they tell me that, Peter, the work we did at TDSB, when we go into other organizations, they tell us, oh my God, this is a very complex project. We have so many moving parts. There are so many different players. This is going to be hard. And then they go over saying, you know what, we have done this kind of work, and they give it Toronto District School Board examples. The people calm down saying, oh my God, that's 250,000 students, 40,000 staff members. That is a super big project. Then compared to that super big merger, ours looks very small. He goes, that has always helped us to calm the waters in these organizations which actually panic over these projects, which they think it's big, but they don't realize what big is big, right? So to me, you don't think about these things when we were doing the work, but now when you go back, you shake your head saying, oh my God, how did we do that? But again, the learning, the commitment, and the outcomes, because some of the things, those were put in place, and they have lasted 20 years. Some of the models are still in play. And some of the technology we brought in lasted around 10, 12, 15 years. So I think we did a lot of right things, and that's why people believed in and us, believed in me as a leader also, saying, you know what, he comes to us with good technology, is ready to help, ready to listen, and wants to work with us, has helped. Those things have helped me to actually continue to grow as an individual. And those learnings happened doing those big projects over the years.
Yeah, and I can't think of a better kind of training ground for someone who's now been for years the CTO of the biggest school district in Canada and like the fourth biggest in North America, maybe the Western world. What is the most delightful part of your job today?
The one part that really excites me when I'm around people, working with individuals or teams and helping them to grow, and also sharing my own practice from the past and coaching, mentoring is something that I really enjoy now, where I am and how many years I have spent in this sector. So that's my happy space when it comes to the work I do. The second piece is around building relationships. And to me, those things start with my own team, and also they extend to people who actually work in the EdTech space, and also the vendor partners, tier one, tier two, all the vendor partners. I believe that we need to maintain those good communication relationships, be open for discussion, and continue to keep an eye on what's brewing in their back rooms and what's happening on our side, and try to bring an alignment over time, saying, you know what, the solution you're working on it, we have a challenge and a problem over here. We believe that you will help us to do that. The only way you can actually make these connections, keeping a tabs on both sides, our internal space and external space. So to me, that networking, the human connection is another key space I really enjoy and I actually thrive. And to me, it also brings a lot of benefits to my team and to my organization when that happens.
What would you say is the most complicated part of your job?
Um, I don't know if I see that as a complicated part. I look at any challenge as an opportunity to do something new and something better. Right now, I think over the last number of years, we believe, or we have experienced, the budget constraints. The funding model is not something in public sector and education. It's growing over the years. We have lost students to our neighboring boards, or they have left the city of Toronto, and they've gone to suburbs, or they have moved to another province. Or some kids go back to, or they go into private schools also in city of Toronto. So because our funding is directly connected to the student count, so over the years, the student enrollment has come down. That means less money coming in, but the demand to do more is happening every year. So we had to figure out, how do we do more with less? And that's been I will say, the constraint or demand I see to continue to explore those opportunities. We do not have unlimited funding in public sector. The dollars are limited, so we have to be extra careful. How do we actually leverage and extend every single dollar that's given to us by taxpayers?
So, what do you wish people understood about TDSB and what it takes to run a district of that size on a day-to-day basis?
The city itself is I will say, reflection of the board itself is a reflection of the city. So we have schools in every single neighborhood. We have more schools in the neighborhoods than the bank branches, right? So you might have one bank branch in one area, but we might have 4 schools in that neighborhood itself too. So it's a reflection of what happens in our city. So anytime anything happens in the city, we are directly connected to it. When I say that, and when you hear in the news a shooting happened, there was 16 years older kid was involved in it. Guess what? That kid is ours. The kid goes to our schools, right? So any incident happen, the moment we hear something that a teenager is involved, a young person is involved, we know it's one of our kids. So we
Mm.
needed to support not just that student, that family, and also that classroom, that school. Because what happens with one individual in a neighborhood, and you can see the impact in the entire school and entire neighborhood, right? So it's a complex city. Um, we have schools where you can say the kids have access to literally everything, and then we go to another neighborhood where the families struggle economically. So trying to bring a balance, trying to look at the lens of every decision we make through the lens of equity is extremely important to us. So to me, the complexity, the geopolitical situations, they end up in our schools, in our
Mm.
classrooms. And we are not really equipped to handle all of them. And to me, sometimes non-academic entities are actually uh, uh, pushing their agendas
Mm.
uh, in schools and through the kids. So we
Mm.
worry about those pieces. And end of the day, our commitment is to help kids to learn and grow and be independent thinkers. We are not here to push any agendas itself too, but we start to see organizations, in some cases it's a few individuals, might try to do those pieces. And
Mm.
those organizations and entities who are trying to do these things, we ended up getting the brunt of it because those situations end up in our schools, in our classrooms, and they ended up in the media itself too.
Mhm.
So, and looking at 583 neighborhoods, something will go wrong somewhere in the city,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and because school board is not a one single classroom, one
Mhm.
teacher. It's a complex ecosystem. So sometimes an incident in one school gets over covered by media in City of Toronto, and it overshadows the good work that happens in every classroom.
Mhm.
Every teacher is helping with the students and helping them to learn and grow. One incident sometimes overshadows all that good work also. So those are
Yeah.
like, it's such a complex piece. It's very hard um, to say that no, everything is going to be normal, smooth every single day or every single month or school year. No, I see every month, every week, something new challenge gets thrown at us, and we have to navigate it, work with our parents, work with the Ministry of Education to make sure we're well aligned to our mission and goals. So we don't get distracted from it. But all these other things become distraction, and a lot of
Yeah.
resources, money, and our staff time goes into resolving those instead of supporting the kids in the classroom itself. It's a complex piece, and I don't think anyone has an answer. But
Mhm.
again, I call that's the work. That's why we put our hand up saying, I want to work in education sector. I want to be a
Mm.
Toronto District School because I want to help and bring my best to serve the stakeholders at Toronto District School Board.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I'm gonna send that clip to people that always have a quick answer for what schools should do, and I don't think this would be different for any jurisdiction where the school districts get used as a political football. Like I see so many times on the news a headline about this happening, and it's like TDSB. It's almost like they're phrasing it where it's like this is the fault of TDSB. When oftentimes the point you made, I think, is crucial, is that you are an organization within the city. What happens to the city happens to TDSB, and I think folks overlook that aspect. You did mention the really great things that are happening in schools. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the most inspiring things you've seen, because I think that's the other side to this equation, to this narrative about education that needs to be told often. So in your years, I know you have a lot of experience. You've seen some amazing things. We've done some of this work together and we've seen it together, but what are some examples that you would pull out to share with the audience?
There's so much happening in the classroom side, and I will start with early years. At the school board, we have a huge commitment that we want to make sure every learner is reading by grade one. So there is a huge focus on early literacy itself too within TDSB. So that's really, really impressive. And we have seen the needles being moved now over the years. So when we look at the research data, it started to show us that. So that's one piece. And the other piece, there's so many I'm going to take you through now. There's a huge focus on the STEM. And I also see now a lot of robotic teams, especially in elementary schools. When I see grade 4 or 5s, all girls robotic team, that excites me. In technology, we always say there's not enough females who actually ended up picking technology as their job fulfilling path. To me, we needed to start early. So investing into STEM, especially with girls, it really excites me. And then some of the programs you have heard, right? The Girls Who Game program, Dell is running, and under the leadership of Katina, has been a huge success. And I have seen a true transformation in the participating students from year one to year two. I've seen them first year very shy, not raising their hand to answer questions or ask a question, to the next year where they were itching to talk. They wanted to share their experience. Every time you ask something to the group, their hands go up. And by year 3 and 4, they're literally turning into mentors for year one program itself too. So to me, these kids are now future leaders, future technology leaders. So that's really the STEM piece, the Girls Who Game. And recently we also did another program with, which is now around data, but it's a connection to Toronto Raptors, former Toronto Raptors player Pascal Siakam. So part of his foundation, they started a program to work with the students to analyzing NBA data. End of the day, we know the importance of data. How can we get kids interested who love basketball and have that connection, start to analyze data, saying you can actually solve real world problems by analyzing data. So Data Dunkers program has been another success I have seen within school boards. Another amazing partnership we had with Tata Consultancy Services, it's called the Go IT program. Just think about hackathon model itself. And then over the years, it has really transformed into a very engaging program where everything they do is connected to the learning outcomes in the classroom. So both students and teachers have been involved. So that program has grown in our environment over, now this is the 11th year. It started in TDSB. The TCS has taken that program to, I believe, 47 countries around the world now. And last year, one of our students from grade 7, she was a global champion, competing against 88,000 kids in the STEM program, in the hackathon itself. So another school was competing against North American schools, and they were number 2 last year itself. So again, having that strong connection to STEM, which is slowly also going more into STEAM, because arts is equally important part of learning itself too. And the board's commitment at the central table also, we have a dedicated superintendent assigned to the STEM portfolio also. So that's really, really exciting. Another piece is over last number of years, the lessons learned through the pandemic. We as a district also invested in what I call is one-to-one/student device program, where we actually offer every grade 5 and 9 an opportunity that here's the device. Are you interested in using a TDSB device? And we have seen close to 85% of the kids actually taking a TDSB device, and the remaining kids have their own device at home, so they don't need a device from us. So that one-to-one program has really made a huge impact across the system itself too. I do get regular emails and messages from parents saying thank you for doing that, because they did not have access to a device at home, and this helped them. And also after the COVID, another thing that really it was important to me was looking at the data, how many families did not have internet access at home. So I made a promise to myself that I need to close that digital divide in the city of Toronto. So when we started the first month in pandemic, it was around 7,800 families told us. Our data truly showed 6 months later that number was down to 5,400 kids. The second year when we looked at it, that number went down to around 3,900 students. Now I tell you that number of kids or families who don't have access to internet at home has dropped below 300. So we made actually a relationship with one of the telcos in Toronto. So they were able to give us a discounted price on a medium internet speed. And we actually had as TDSB paid for the internet for those families. And on the flip side, I went to our vendor partners to do fundraising to commit dollars to actually cover that cost itself too. So right now, there is no student in TDSB without an internet. We actually want to close that gap itself too. The extension of that one is too, schools told us that, there are some shelters in our neighborhood because the family ends up in a shelter for a few weeks or a month or so, and the kids don't have access to internet there. So I worked with the telcos again to make sure actually they put internet service in those shelters also. So you can literally see kids have access to now technology and internet at school, at the local libraries. If they ended up in the shelters, they're there. And also they have access to internet at home. So to me, that has been an amazing work over the years I have seen to really, really close the digital divide.
Yeah, I actually think that story requires its own podcast, because I think it's an amazing example of not only community building, but where there's a will and a need, there's a way, and how you did that. And I want to give credit obviously to the TDSB team, because it's as you mentioned, it's about your team that helped do this for the families. I think it's a really great example. Maybe in the future we can get some of the folks that helped you on all sides of the equation, have a conversation about it, because I think it's a great model for what needs to continue to happen. I don't think we can leave that to just the pandemic as a result of just the pandemic. I think that kind of way you got so many different constituents, so many different corporate partners, education partners together to make that happen is really valuable. But for now, can I ask you a question about how you work with corporate entities in general? I know in the past, people have viewed TDSB as, for lack of a better term, a cash cow. They all want to make the back of their company on the size and scale of TDSB. You've worked with vendors for, decades. What advice would you give to EdTech companies that believe they have a really great product that can help students, can help teachers, can help administrators? What advice would you give them to navigating the complex EdTech space?
No, thank you. It's a very powerful question because I've been living and breathing this space for now a number of years. I've seen really some good successes, and in some cases, I also have seen people gone the other way. So I think one thing that really stands out for me to work and play in EdTech, you really have to truly understand what the need is. Sometimes the folks actually, and that wonderful idea they might have picked up, and they pursue that path, but they haven't done enough, I will say, investigation work or research work and connecting to the stakeholders who will, in the end, use the technology solution and platforms. And I see that little bit of a disconnect. And by the time they are market ready and they're trying to sell their solutions, then the stakeholder is saying, we don't really need that. We already have this in place. But we have these other gaps you needed to help us on it. I'll give you one example at a very high level. There were a number of years when people were still trying to come up with new learning management systems. And in Ontario, the ministry actually invested in one for last 15 years. So they actually pay for the licensing costs and all those things. Now, as a school board, how many learning management system can you really have, right? So to me, it becomes so hard for us to really, really say, you know what, we love this brand new learning management system that you just launched. Let's jump on it. No, it's not going to happen because it's going to cost us. There's a cost to the human change management side of things too. When teachers start doing something, they love it. It's very hard for them to move into something new because they have to rejig their entire lesson plans, assessment, rubrics, and everything else. And so it becomes a huge challenge. So I think for the newcomers, it's very important for them to make sure the stakeholders who are going to be using their technology is part of their research, investigation, or I will call user groups. Could be an advisory board they're creating. So they're part of those discussions up front, not at the tail end when they have put in so much money and time to create a solution itself too. Another piece I advise sometimes, they come to me as their first connection saying, Peter, we have a solution. I think we can do a pilot with you. By the way, the pilot will be free for you. So I tell them that we don't just jump on a pilot because the pilots do cost us. Our own staff time is also an investment. We can't burn our staff time to actually make a pilot successful. So I encourage them to go to smaller school boards or sometimes go to private schools because they are small entities, quicker decision making, test drive their solution, mature it, tweak it, and then you're ready for enterprise shops like us. We are also looking at, when we onboard a solution, how does it integrate into our existing investments? How does it talk to a school information systems? How does it talk to an ERP? How does it talk to some of the authentication platforms we have in place? And what does identity management look like in this space and the one we have itself too? So we go through that entire back-end architecture saying, is this a good fit into our existing architectural model? There are a lot of times they are not a good fit. And we struggle because we don't want to run something in a standalone environment somewhere else. It does not integrate well into our existing ecosystem itself too. So I think those are some of the red flags I wanted to say that the startups or a brand new vendor should be looking at it. The sooner you can address some of these pieces, that's extremely important. I can also stress now your application, your platform also has to be addressing the cyber threat landscape because security is huge. There can't be any gaps the way it's been programmed, coded, the platform you're using. All those pieces have to be looked at it because any small hole will be leveraged by the bad actor, threat actor, to actually get into an environment itself too. So that's another piece that when you're thinking about the solution, make sure has Dr. Kevorkian has launched that concept of privacy by design. I think it's extremely important to think that right at the beginning when you're actually designing any new application, new system, new platform, or any application.
Wonderful. And I think that's a lot of great advice that hopefully saves folks a lot of time, money, and energy on the ed tech side because, as you know, I work with a lot of those folks. And I think your point about starting early and trying to understand the true needs early is more important than developing the fancy widget or fancy tool before you get too into the actual weeds of what can actually help districts like TDSB. A couple questions here, Peter, before we wrap up. One, I know you've seen and networked with CTOs and superintendents and directors of education all across Ontario, all across Canada and the US, and even probably further than that. But I want to ask you a question about Canadian education. What do you feel are the pillars or the strengths of Canadian education writ large?
I think one of the things that really stands out, especially Ontario, I can see that across Canada too, we have a very strong publicly funded education system. If we look around the folks who are now leaders, running private businesses, working in public or private sector or global companies, these individuals are all products of public education system, right? So it has worked well. It has delivered quality outcomes over the years. And also it establishes equality across the entire country itself, right? I'm not saying that we have solved all our Canadian challenges, and we know that a lot of our Indigenous people don't have access to still good schools, right? And they have to travel far away. Their kids have to travel far away to get good education. We still need to close those gaps. But one thing that stands out in my own head is that this is a publicly funded school system which has delivered good outcomes year after year and should be recognized globally. I believe we have one of the best publicly funded education system. In Ontario, 96% of the kids go to publicly funded schools. That's a huge investment for the governments and the taxpayers. And to me, the ROI is there because what we have in our school is the next generation of workers, leaders, innovators, scientists. They're all in our schools right now. So that's one amazing thing I find about the Canadian education space.
Wonderfully put from your mouth to voters' ears to continue to support public education here in Ontario. My penultimate question for you. If you had a magic wand and could do anything to the public education system, what would you do?
I think one of the pieces I think we needed to continue to invest more is in early education, early years. And to me, even the preschool is extremely important. And to me, I think as a society, we need to value those preschool years for our students. and especially supporting the young families. The workplace is having good daycare spaces, and the parents is able to get back into the workforce. At the same time, they have affordable daycares, quality daycares available. So the learners, by the time they come into our junior kindergarten, they have some of the basic reading, writing, literacy, and numeracy skills in place. So I think those are extremely important because those are the building blocks. The child minds is what happens between from day one to 4.5 years. The science tells us that the mind is really, really fertile. And how can we actually now build that to really grow fast and expose them to a lot of learning opportunities? So I think as a society, if we can invest more into that space, then we will not be having challenges later on in the school system. You don't want a learner going into grade 9 and their reading skills is at grade 2 level, right? That to me is a missed opportunity altogether. So to me, if we can get kids engaged into schooling, preschool, then we have a good start in early years, which turns into building blocks for middle and later on by the time they get into high schools. So to me, my magic wand is investment in preschool ecosystem as a society to help us lower our costs later on in life for these kids because we can give them a better start in life.
Well, excellent. And I'm glad that you and TDSB are involved in that work and that, quite frankly, the federal government over the years has really stepped that up because I couldn't agree more. Peter, always my last question. What podcast, book, video, movie, music album have you enjoyed recently or in the past that you would recommend to the audience?
For movies, recently the one I really enjoyed was AI related too. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Control. It's like the keyword CTRL, right? It's out of Bollywood, but it makes a huge connection to AI. I think it's worth watching. There's entertainment, but there's connection to the work we do. So I really enjoyed that one. But regular shows like all of us enjoy. Right now. I'm happy the Yellowstone is back online.
Back on.
And we just finished watching Diplomat. I love that political tension kind of drama. So it was worth it. And so I don't know if you remember Jack Ryan. They had 3 seasons show. And a similar kind of show, it's called now, I think it's called Linus. Nicole Kidman's in it. So I've been enjoying that too. So that's been the TV side of things. On the book side, recently I was at one of the conferences and one of the keynote speaker was there and she shared her book with us. So I've been actually now going to reading that one. The focus is on the generative age by Alana Winnick, a very young teacher who's sharing how AI is going to have a huge influence on education for coming years. And she is so right. I think we are at the cusp of a paradigm shift. So we as individuals who work in this space now need to be prepared, ready, and see how we can actually leverage the power of AI and help our learners and the teachers at the same time, along with our administrative staff too, to leverage this technology, get some cycles and time back into their lives. I loved recently when one of the school boards in Ontario, the director said their AI strategy is actually built around 2 pieces. One is around wellness, which is again focus on the teachers. How can we give teachers time back work they do leveraging AI. Then on the equity side for the students, saying, for example, a kid who has both parents and they are well off might have access to additional learning opportunity through a tutor. But a kid who's looking after his siblings, single parent, might not have that access. Can we use AI tutoring to actually help that learner on a daily basis? So that equity lens to me stood out for me, that we don't need to look at these next generation of technology just through the technology lens. We need to look at some of the outcomes we've been trying to accomplish over the years. Well-being and equity has been part of our work. So we needed to connect these newer technologies to these opportunities and come up with new concepts and models to make it happen in our schools and classrooms.
Well, and I think we are on the verge of just that. So with that, the one and only Peter Singh, thank you for your time.
Jason, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. And you and I have chatted about these things over the years, but it was a privilege to be on your podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. This podcast is recorded on the territory and Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. The show is edited and produced by the marvelous and talented Andrew Mastroianni. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, remember, there's absolutely no inevitability as long as there's a willingness to contemplate what's happening. I'm your host, Jason Bukhari. Until next time.